Okay, guys, here's a second example where we're going to have to use that distributive property for clearing the fraction method. So first step, let me get my pen out. The first step here is finding the LCD, the least common denominator of the fractions. Well, thankfully in this case we only have one fraction, so the denominator in this case is 8. So we are going to multiply both sides by that number 8. So let me get my pen out. So we're going to multiply this entire side by 8 and this side by 8. So again, using that distributive property to multiply to every term. So we're going to take 8 times the 5/8 b minus 3 times 8. And I told you my pen is terrible, equaling, and 2 times 8 already is 16. So if we're confused on where I got this from, it's just like that area model where if we drew this, and then we had 8 here, and we're multiplying times the 5/8 b and then -3. So we would do 8 times 5/8, leaving us with 5b, because these just cancel, and leave us with 5b, and then minus our 24, which this would still be minus 24 here. It's the same thing, equaling 16. So now this is normal. Solve using inverse operations. Start with the addition or subtraction. Plus 24 plus 24. That leaves me with 5b equals 40. Then divide both sides by 5. b equals 8. Okay, if you have any questions, raise your hand. I'll help explain what's going on. Hopefully we're understanding. Okay, so the problems are getting more challenging as we go through. This time we have lots of fractions. So looking at the denominators, we have 2, 3, and 6. So it's the same idea with adding or subtracting fractions. We have to find a common denominator. The least common denominator makes our life the easiest. So the smallest number I'm thinking that will work would be 6 to clear those fractions. So we're going to multiply this side by 6 over 1, and we're going to multiply this entire side by 6 over 1. So first, multiplying the left side, 6 times 3, that's 18 over 2. And then we have to do, this is the distributive property, so we have to just multiply it times each term, towards every term. So 1/3 x, we got to multiply by 6 over 1, and then we have to do 1/6 by 6 over 1. So here I can simplify 18 over 2 to be 9. Okay, and I'm going to simplify before I multiply, so my math is much easier. So I'm going to look at my diagonals, 6 and 3. I can divide them both by 3, leaving me with 1 and 2. So 2 times 1, that's just 2x. Again, I'm going to simplify before I multiply. I've got 2 6's here. I can just divide them both by 6, leaving me with 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. So it's just going to be plus 1. So this is solving using inverse operations. Do the opposite with the addition or subtraction first. Minus 1, that leaves me with 8 equals 2x. Divide by 2, divide by 2. 4 equals x. Okay, again, we've got multiple fractions here. We've got a denominator of 4, 2, and 8. So looking at this, what do you think would be the least common denominator? Or yes, least common denominator. 8 should have been the right answer. We could use 16, but again, that's not the smallest. There's going to be a lot more math involved. So we're going to multiply both sides by that number 8. So this is where we use that distributive property, multiplying everything on this side by 8, and then multiplying on this side by 8. So here we're taking 8 times the 5n over 4 plus 8 times 1/2 equaling, I'm just going to multiply here. Again, I can simplify before I multiply. These 8, you can just divide them by 8, leaving you with 1. So that's just negative 3 over 1, which is just negative 3. So here, I'm going to simplify. So looking at my diagonals, I've got 8 and 4. I can divide them both by 4, leaving me with 1 and 2. So 2 times 5 is 10n plus my diagonals, 2 and 8. Divide by 2, that's 1. That's 4. 4 times 1 is 4, equaling negative 3. And this is our step 4. Solve using inverse operations. Start with addition or subtraction. Minus our 4, minus our 4. That's 10n equals negative 3 minus 4. That's negative 7. Dividing by 10. Dividing by 10. That leaves us with n equals, I'm just going to leave it negative 7/10. You can't really see that. Oops. Negative 7/10. Okay, moving on to example 12. Before, I'm just reminding you, remember, the least common denominator is the smallest number that each of the denominators could multiply to be. So, for example, if we had 1/3, 2 9ths, and 5/18, the least common denominator would be 18 in this case. Just a random example. Okay, so we've got multiple fractions. We've got denominators of 9, 2, 9, and 3. So first step, we have to find our least common denominator, which is 18 in this case. So we are going to multiply this side by 18 and this side by 18. Okay, and then using that distributive property where we're multiplying it by each term here. We have to multiply it by those 3 terms. Oops. So 18, it's going to be hard for me to write, times the 7x over 9 plus 18 times the x over 2 minus 18 times the 17 over 9. And I'm just going to multiply this. Again, I'm going to simplify. Divide by 3, that leaves 1 and 6. So 6 times 2 is 12. Okay, so making my life way easier, dividing or simplifying before I multiply. 18 and 9 can divide by 9, that's 1, that's 2. 18 and 2, dividing by 2, that's 1 and 9. And then 18 and 9, that's dividing by 9, that's 1 and 2. So it simplifies to be 14, because 2 times 7 is 14. X plus the 9 times x is 9. Then 2 times 17 is minus 34, equaling 12. Now you got to solve like normal, but first you got to combine like terms. So you got to combine your 14x and your 9x to be 23, because they're both positive, you're adding them. I'm going to continue on a new page. So now that we've combined like terms, we can solve like normal, starting with the addition and subtraction. So we're going to add that 34, so these go away, leaving us with 2x equals 40, or 23x equals 46. And then we're going to divide both sides by 23, leaving us with x equals 2. Okay, another one. First step, we got to find the least common denominator. In this case, all of the denominators are 4, so we're going to multiply both sides by 4 to clear the fractions. So we're multiplying this whole entire side by 4 and this whole entire side by 4. So remembering that we have to use the distributive property and multiply by each term. So we're taking the 4 times the first term, so 4 times the 3n over 4 plus 4 times the 5. Whoa! The 5/4, don't know what happened there. Equaling, I'm just going to go ahead and multiply this. 4 over 1, simplify. 4 divided by 4 is just 1, so that's just negative 1. So when we simplify before we multiply, looking at the diagonals, 4 and 4, simplify them to 1, divide them by 4. 4 and 4, simplify them by 1. So you're left with just the 3n plus the 5 equaling negative 1. Solve like normal. Do the opposite, starting with addition and subtraction. Minus your 5 from both sides, leaving you with 3n, because this goes away, equaling negative 6. Getting the n by itself, doing the opposite, so dividing both sides by 3, leaving you with n equals negative 2. Okay, again, I'm running out of time on this video. I knew this lesson would take multiple days, so go ahead and try this problem, and then you'll start the next video.